Welcome to Christian World News, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. The Wall Street Journal is reporting American pastor Andrew Brunson could be released from Turkey at his next court hearing on October 12th. The nearly 2-year-old saga has led to an international crisis between the two NATO allies. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, there's much more at stake than just world politics.
The Turkish government moved Pastor Brunson from jail to house arrest in July. Although the 50-year-old pastor has ministered in the country for more than 2 decades, the Turkish government charged Brunson with conspiring against President Erdogan's rule during a 2016 attempted coup. The Trump administration calls those charges bogus and has made securing Pastor Brunson's freedom a priority.
I don't think there's ever been any administration, any president that has brought up a prisoner of conscience, a prisoner who's in prison because of his faith, more than any other one than President Reagan did for Nathan Sharansky. So this is historic.
And the Trump administration went beyond talking, leveling sanctions on Turkey that put its currency into a free fall.
All of the secular media, without exception, are saying, a pastor, who cares about a pastor? The trade with Turkey is much more important. The money and the value of the lira is much more important. But the Trump administration said, no, a pastor who's falsely accused and is in prison is important to us, and we're willing to really put our money where our mouths are, and they're taking a strong stand.
Egyptian-born Michael Youssef says other nations are paying attention.
Now, the world is watching this. They are not ignoring this. They know that they're going to be next unless they stop persecuting Christians.
Franklin Graham called Christians to pray and for the U.S. to be careful.
First, I would ask everybody who's watching right now, the Christians, to pray for Andrew Brunson. He's been falsely accused. This is just a sham. Turkey, we have to remember that this is a country that is fast becoming a radical Islamic state. I think we need to get Brunson home, and we need to be very careful with whatever we do as a country with Turkey until they change leadership and change the direction they're going.
Karam says there's much more at stake than an international crisis between NATO allies.
There's been many people, ourselves included, that believe God was going to do something in Izmir, the ancient Smyrna, Izmir, where Andrew Brunson is today, that was going to impact not only Turkey, but all the nations around it. Because it's clear that Andrew Brunson is in prison or under arrest for one reason, and that's his hope and faith in Jesus Christ as the Messiah, not only of the West, but of the entire world.
And joining us all the way from Jerusalem is CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. Chris, brother, it's great to see you.
Great to be with you, Wendy. Yeah, here in Virginia Beach.
Here in Virginia Beach. Well, I got to ask you, how likely do you think it is that Pastor Brunson will be released?
I think it is likely. There was a good, that Wall Street Journal report says perhaps after this next hearing, next month could be. That's why it's so important to be praying for his release and praying that his imprisonment is really going to spread the gospel around the Middle East.
That's true, because we've gotten our hopes up before.
That's right.
And
And there was a possibility of a deal last summer, a couple of months ago. Right. It fell through, and I think President Trump was a little upset that he felt like President Erdogan may have backtracked on that particular deal. But we'll see what happens in a few days.
Chris, how important is it that leading members of the U.S. government are really pushing for his release?
You know, as I said in the story, it's historic. I mean, consider that you have to go back to Ronald Reagan and Nathan Sharansky. He was a refusenik back in many years ago, back in the early 1980s, and Reagan stood up for him. And now President Trump, Vice President Pence are standing up for Pastor Brunson and making really an international scene between these two NATO allies. It's really almost unprecedented, and really, I think, really one way that the Trump administration is standing up for religious freedom.
How would you describe the relationship right now between the two nations, Turkey and the U.S.?
Tense, because he's put sanctions on Turkey. The Turkey lira has been falling, so I think very tense. And this is really one of the main issues between the two nations.
Now, Brunson's daughter recently spoke out about this whole ordeal being part of God's plan.
Right.
I want your thoughts on that, but first, let's take a look at this.
I'll say there are times when I'm not necessarily happy with God's plan in this situation, but I've really come to realize that God is in complete control and He has a plan, and this is all for His glory. He is worth everything that my family has gone through, And I've seen that message coming through in letters from my dad as well, as he has started to transform and really submit to God and say, God, my life is yours. Whatever you do with me, let it honor you, let it declare your name and your goodness to people. And I am
incredible.
Yeah.
Chris, what is your response to that, and how can our viewers at home be praying for
Well,
Pastor
they can be praying for his strength, that he's gone through such an ordeal in the last 2 years. Pray for his release, but also pray, and I think what his daughter said there, it's bigger than just Pastor Brunson. It really has taken Christianity to a whole new level inside Turkey, one of the least evangelized countries in the world. He's been ministering in Izmir, which is ancient Smyrna. This is one of the churches out of the book of Revelation. So really, it's really spreading and taking the Christianity to a whole new level, not only in Turkey, but in other nations around Turkey, and making his case visible in a much greater way than ever before.
All right. Thanks for covering this and keeping us up to date. And we will certainly be praying for
Amen.
Pastor Brunson and his family. Incredible testimony from his daughter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great to see you here
Great to
in
be
the United States.
Yeah, there you go.